So, a very pleasant morning to all our speakers and the participants of the event. Hope everyone is doing well. I'll start by introducing Link CXO and then our speakers for the event. So, here at Link CXO, we started with the sole aim to give like minded CXOs a dedicated platform to thrive. Realizing the need of the hour was a reliable space where the most successful leaders of today could connect, collaborate, and celebrate. We worked closely with CXOs, entrepreneurs, experts, influencers, and investors to create the best possible formula for professional networking. And the result, Link CXO, an exclusive invite-based AI-enabled CXO engagement and recommendation platform. It is an intelligent tool to change the way senior leaders collaborate globally. Now, coming to our speakers for the event, we have Dr. Dhruv Nath, Mr. Chetan Shirlani, and Mr. Ravish Ratnam with us. Dr. Dhruv Nath is a professor at MDI Gurgaon, a director with Lead Angels, and an angel investor. Earlier was a senior vice president at NIIT Limited. He has been a consultant to the top management of several organizations such as Glaxo, Gillette, Nestle, Indian Oil Corporation, Thermax, Bajaj Auto, etc. He now mentors startups. Dr. Nath has a BTech in electrical engineering and a PhD in computer science, both from IIT Delhi. He has written 4 books, the latest one being Funding Your Startup and Other Nightmares, co-authored with Sushanto Mitra and published by
This
Penguin
one.
Random House.
This one.
We welcome you, sir.
You're as well.
Now, Mr. Chetan Shirlani is a law graduate and an MBA, having 20 years of rich cross-industry experience and exposure from insurance, healthcare, executive search, and technology products and platforms. Mr. Chetan is tech savvy and specializes in analytics, consulting, and business development, mentoring many tech startups. He is currently associated with Venture Catalysts as regional partner Bangalore. We welcome you, sir.
Thank
Now,
you, Manish.
Mr. Ravish Ratnam is a founder and managing partner at Point One Capital, a pre-seed and early seed focused VC fund. He was earlier heading investor relations at Let's Venture, India's leading online platform connecting early stage startups to angel investors. An IIT Delhi graduate as well. He has keen interest in politics, gaming, and cricket, apart from, of course, startups and technology. We welcome you as well, sir. It's an honor for us to host this event with such vibrant speakers. This is going to be an amazing event, I'm sure. So let's begin with Dr. Dhruv Nath. Over to you, sir.
Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, so by the way, Manish, you have to tell me when I have to stop because professors find it very easy to start but very difficult to stop. Yeah. Okay.
No, we don't mind cutting our session. You can continue. So absolutely no issue.
So this is what Manish asked me to talk about. And what I thought I'd talk about is, we've recently written a book where we have tried to describe a framework called Persistent, which is used by successful startups and also by investors who want to invest, right? So I thought I'd talk about this framework. And the way I'll talk about it is I'll first share with you one startup, the story of one startup that I have invested in, and I've been through their journey. And then from there, I'll try and extract what this persistent framework means, right? So that's the background. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good. So I'll share the example of an interesting company called AHA Taxis. By the way, this was also a guy from IIT Delhi. So he focused on the subject of taxis for outstation travel, not like Uber and Ola, which is within the city. This is outstation. And specifically, he focused on the problem of one-way travel. You want to go, let's say, from Delhi to Lucknow, but you don't want to come back because you have an air ticket or you have a train ticket or you don't know how many days you'll be staying there or whatever. So now there is a fundamental problem with taking a one-way taxi, right? And the problem is that every taxi has a base city. So let's say you want to go from Delhi to Lucknow and you take a Delhi-based taxi, you can only take it from Delhi nobody can take the taxi from Lucknow on the way back, right? That's the problem, which means the taxi takes you from here to Delhi, to Lucknow, drops you off, but he cannot get return fare, which means he returns empty. And if he returns empty, he will charge you two-way fare even for a one-way trip, right? So that's the fundamental problem. You want to travel one way, but you are actually paying two-way fare. So this is the problem that AHA Taxis tried to tackle, and this is the solution they came out with. So what they did was they onboarded a very large number of taxi operators. I think as of today, they have probably over 35,000 of them. And what they did was they could now communicate with these operators wherever they were, right? So they could be in Lucknow, they could be in Bareilly, they could be in Coimbatore, and they could communicate. So every time these guys were able to provide the taxi a passenger during the return journey as well, because they could communicate with him even if he was not in his base city. Yeah. And therefore the taxi charged them one way fare, and they put a margin of 10-15% on top of that, and therefore they charge the customer one way plus a little more. So what is the process? Let's try and understand. The customer asks for a booking. Okay. AHA Taxi gives them a fare based on past data. The customer does the booking because the customer will not wait, right? Now AHA Taxi manually checks with possible operators. So if it's, let's say, Delhi to Lucknow, or let's say Lucknow to Delhi, they will look at all those guys who are either who have their base city in Lucknow, or those guys who have reached Lucknow and therefore are available to come back. And then based on this, they allocate a taxi. And of course, rates could vary, depend on seasonality and so on. So this is what typically they do, and therefore they are able to provide the operator a customer both ways. So now let's extract from this AHA Taxis example and share with you something that we call the persistent framework. So first of all, are you solving a problem? And by the way, persistent, just look at each letter in this, right? So P in persistent is, are you solving a problem? Yes, you are, because guys want to travel one way and they're forced to pay two way, right? Is there an earnings model? Somehow will you make money? AHA Taxis makes money by charging a commission over that one-way fare that the taxi charges them. Okay, is there a large enough market size? Because nobody wants to be in a startup, and definitely no investor wants to invest in a startup which is tiny and which can only grow to being a tiny startup. So therefore, potentially it has to be a very large market. And obviously, outstation travel is a huge market because Indians forget COVID, but otherwise they keep traveling, and therefore it's a large market. Next question, is it scalable, right? And fundamental question is AHA Taxi scalable? And by the way, if you look at these letters, the first letter of each, P in persistent, E in earnings model, size of the market is the first S, scalability is the second S, and so on. So look at the scalability of AHA Taxis. Every time a customer wanted a taxi, AHA Taxis would either send an SMS or phone up appropriate operators, and very often there would be a telephone call, which means it's a very intensive manual process. And manual processes normally are less scalable than automated processes. So therefore, the scalability in AHA Taxis, at least initially, was low. But what they did was, and this is very interesting, they pivoted, and finally they made it scalable because they developed an app, and all taxi operators are supposed to download this app. So when a customer books a taxi, a message is automatically sent out to the apps of these operators, and then the taxi is bid. So there is no manual involvement, and therefore scalability goes up, right? So if I go back to the persistent model, now AHA Taxi's scalability is much higher than it was in the beginning. Okay, so I've talked about 4 components of persistent. Then is risks. Obviously, every business has risks. So for example, in this case, if Uber were to say, look, the outstation one-way travel is a phenomenal opportunity, I'll get in, right? That's a huge risk, right? So what you need really is an entry barrier, something which will prevent competition from easily coming in. See, ultimately competition can come in, but at least easily coming in. And incidentally, if you have an innovative solution, preferably with some kind of IPR, some kind of patents, that normally forms an entry barrier. So let's take a look at how AHA Taxi built an entry barrier. Initially, it was low. Anybody could have got into this business. Once they built the app, yes, the other guys, competitors would have had to build a similar app to enter the same business. But I think the most important thing that happened was, because they had a huge number of taxis, right? Irrespective of which city you're traveling from and which city you're going to, AHA Taxis will always be able to give you enough options. And that's an entry barrier, because the next guy will take time to build up to 35,000 taxi, right? So very often we'll find that uh, over time, the entry barrier tends to increase. And by the way, the brand also by today has become a bit of an entry barrier. Incidentally, I must tell you today, AHA Taxis has been bought over by Ebix Cash, right, which is one of the market leaders in the business. So, okay, so we've looked at entry barriers. What do you do if the market is crowded? So, outstation taxis actually is a hugely crowded market, because in every colony, you will have, your next door taxi operator and say, हाँ साहब मैं दे दूंगा, no problem. So if the market is crowded, try and locate a niche, a large enough niche which is not crowded, right? And these guys identified one-way taxis as that niche, and which is why they've been growing quite dramatically. Couple of last points. What is the final proof? You may do all these things. The final proof is, are you getting customers? Are you getting traction? Are you getting increasing traction? Are you getting customers? Let's say, are you making 5 lakhs of revenue in the first month? 4 months later, are you making 20 lakhs? 4 months later, are you making 80 lakhs? Are you getting growing traction, right? One last thing, very, very important. What's the team, right? And the team starts with the founder, obviously, right? Now, in this case, AHA Taxis, the guy was highly experienced and he had good pedigree. I think he's from IIT Delhi and one of the original IIM. So, no problem, right? So, this broadly persistent is what we use for evaluating a startup, right? And in case you're looking at creating a startup and you want it to be successful, this is one framework to use. Now, the next question, important question: what do the investors look for? Because we have looked at it so far from the point of view of the founder. Now, let's look at it from the point of view of the investor. And actually, if you think about it, the investor and the founder actually look for exactly the same thing. Both want successful startups. Both want the startup to grow rapidly. Both want the startup to be in a market where the space is huge. Both want entry barriers so that competition cannot get in. So if you look at what investors look for, it's exactly the same persistent framework, right? And in fact, at Lead Angels, which is where we evaluate a lot of startups to fund, and we also mentor a very large number of them, we try and examine and evaluate startups within the persistent framework. All right. So that's broadly what we do. So I'll just give you a little background. Um, this whole persistent framework, it isn't something which came out of the blue suddenly. I have about 6-7 years in the startup industry. I've been an angel investor. I've been evaluating and mentoring many of them. And my colleague, who's the CEO of Lead Angels, the founder, he has been in this business for the last, I think, 20 years. And we have studied and spent time with a lot of these startups. And we found a lot that failed. We found a lot that succeeded. From there, we evaluated, look, what are the factors which lead to success and what are the factors which lead to failure. And that is how this persistent framework got created. We've basically captured a lot of these startups in the book. And by the way, in case somebody wants to buy it, that's the link to Amazon to buy it. So that's broadly our persistent framework. And obviously, at the end, if you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. So I think even for a professor, I finished early.
Great, sir. Just in time, I will say. Great, sir. Great.
Okay, wonderful.
Great insights. Some new things which I personally got to know, that the investors view and how you match it with the founders view. Great.
Boss, I've just
So
appointed you. Manish, I've just appointed you platinum distributor for the book, and your target is a miserable 10,000 copies.
Great.
We'll do it in a week's
Okay.
time. So
I'll just stop sharing. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, okay. So I would request Mr. Chetan to please take over and
sure.
share his views.
Sure. Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Professor. That was a wonderful start. Whatever I had to say, 99% has been covered by Dr. Dhruvnath. So I don't have many things to say now.
Manish, sabko lunch khila do.
Right. See, what I had promised, I wanted to kind of, share a couple of, on the ground experiences where we have seen some good exits in the recent past, especially during the COVID time. Again, just to add to Dr. Nath's point, when he spoke about his book, when I bought it, it's a typical example of a good exit, right? Manish connected us, right? I spoke to him, made a deal that, I'll kind of read and give a good review. He offered me a single malt with an investment of 400 rupees. I got 10x, 4,000 rupees in return. So at the end of the day, see, you invest as an angel investor, you invest in startups to make at least a 10x kind of profit, right? So we always tell our investors that, this is a high risk, high return kind of an asset class, right? And we at, Venture Catalyst, which is one of the leading integrated incubators across the globe, we have kind of democratized the whole concept of angel investing, right? Where we have brought down the ticket size significantly down. Otherwise, probably, both Dr. Nath and Ravish has been in the industry for a long time, and we don't really compete, but we are in a similar business. But many a times, we also complement to each other. We are essentially a syndication platform. Say, if I were to kind of raise, 10 crores, if from my network, I'm able to do about 5 crores, I'll obviously work with, Ravish or Dr. Nath to raise another 5 crores. So we kind of don't really compete, but we kind of complement with each other. The market is humongous, right? Especially, this is kind of just opening up, right? And one of the, early exits, which our co-founder, Dr. Apoorv Ranjan Sharma, during his stint with another, this was, I think, the first incubator in India called Venture Nursery. This was way back in early 2000, where they had invested in about 10 startups, right? A very, very early stage startup, or in a crude way, you can call them garage startups then, right? And 9 of them miserably failed. They didn't even take off, and they kind of couldn't get to the next round of funding. One company, right? One company which gave them 250x return, right? Which is, we all know, this is Oyo Room, Ritesh Agarwal's Oyo Room. Today, it's not just a unicorn. This is valued at about, close to $10 billion US dollars, right? And this is the second largest hotel chain, across the globe now. They're also looking at penetrating into other markets now. They already have a very strong presence in Southeast Asia. Middle East, they've just started off, and they're also looking at expanding it to other markets as well now, right? And see, definitely, if you look at Ritesh's background, right? He was from a small town in Orissa called Rayagada, right? And he was a college dropout. When he started Oyo, he was 17 years old. Today, he must be 26, 27 now, right? In 10 years, he's the youngest, billionaire across the globe now, right? And again, going back to Dr. Nath's point, definitely, the objective should be, it should be the same actually, whether you invest or, when a founder, founds a startup, right? So that's, the idea should marry. So one of the reasons, we keep asking Dr. Apoorv, what made you invest in Oyo? When this guy was just 17-year-old, right? Had no, forget about pedigree, didn't even have the basic qualification. And, from a small town, had no exposure in terms of traveling. And, he was not from a hotel business kind of a thing. Then he said, no, when I met this guy for the first time, I realized that this guy was married to the idea, where he wanted to kind of bring the transformation in that particular hotel, which was like, from an aesthetics perspective, it was looking good, but it had absolutely no business because, the guy had just constructed the building. And when this guy took over and made it an OYO room, that's where I think, he brought in a lot of transformation just by changing, some basic bed linens or changing lights, bringing some uniformity in terms of the, experiences and things like that. So with one hotel, I think today you all know the story of OYO, right? So that is, one of the exits which did not really happen at Venture Catalyst, but our co-founder was involved in this during his early days of incubation. In fact, Dr. Apurv's, PhD is in incubation. So he is considered to be, one of the renowned members in the whole incubation industry. See, the other startup, which I would like to talk about is a company called Beardo. So I see at least, a couple of people with a beard here, right? Into men's grooming category. So when they presented to us a few years back, so we thought, what are they talking about? They are neither Fair and Lovely nor a Nivea. So Beardo sounds also a little weirdo. So we were not really keen in terms of should we really be investing in such a category, right? A typical brick and mortar, right? Guys were from Ahmedabad. They were not even from any of the tier 1 markets, right? Then they said, we're going to kind of make it a, category. Thanks to them, a lot of people have started following their footsteps now, right? You have a brand called Dadi Mooch now. You have something called Ustra now. You have, quite a few. And see, this is one of the recent, exits which we saw. And we got an exit in the month of September 2020 during the peak of the COVID times, right? And this company was acquired by Marico. We also have a good working relationship with Mariwala's family office. So that kind of made us, and by the way, even during COVID, this gave us a 7x kind of a rate. And all the investors, even who have invested 10 lakhs, they made 70 lakhs. So that's a kind of, exit. And see, this is a very interesting story, right? See, our modus operandi is, technically, as Dr. Nath was saying, we also have a very robust process of curation. So these guys undergo at least 4 levels of different due diligence. Then it goes to an investment committee where a lot of people gave their perspective even outside of Venture Catalyst. And interestingly, our sourcing team was not very keen in terms of taking this to our IC, investment committee. Right? Even in the investment committee, 9 out of 10 people said, boss, this is not a model to invest. We have no understanding of this. Let us not invest in this. Right? But our founder, Dr. Apurv Ranjan Sharma, used his veto, said, no, we are going ahead with this investment. And, with even we found it a little difficult to kind of close the round where we had committed. And of course, somehow we did it. But today we have absolutely no regrets. So this was one of my first investments, right, which kind of gave this kind of a return. So I'm very happy for, and see, these days, we invest across, we are a very broad-based firm. So we invest across sectors. We have also seen, a success in, one of the dying portfolios. If you are aware of this company called Super Daily, which is into this milk, and of course, they have got into grocery distribution as well. So when, we invested, so the valuation was almost, negative, where we thought, should we really be investing in this or not? So we also kind of, turned around this particular portfolio where we made Super Daily a profitable and we sold it to Swiggy with, it was not a huge return, but 2x, because in not every deal you make 10x. I wish I could. Right. And see, off late, our focus has been to ensure less mortality. So one of the good news is which I can share is, our mortality rate is in single digit. It's it kind of fluctuates between 7 to 9%. So that is, something, which we have ensured. So these are, some of the, recent exits, which I wanted to talk about. Not really in the, deep tech or pure tech. Of course, we have quite a few portfolios. We have about, we have invested in about 130 companies in last 4 years, and we have already seen 30 great exits. Like this, just want to take a sample of 10 and share it with you all. We also have a lot of companies which are getting into the next round now. There's a company called PSafe and RahoSafe. They are also making a lot of noise in the market now, especially during COVID times. This company, has kind of reached a $1 million turnover in one of the months. Right. We also have something like Kootloot, Blue Smart. Again, some kind of a competition with AHA Taxi, but they're a pure play EV fleet. Right. And so a lot of interesting. We are very, very sector agnostic. Kind of a platform. Except of course, we have few off limits. We don't invest in non-veg. We don't invest in leather, and we don't invest in alcohol. So we'll not be able to kind of create any competition to Sula or Bira 91, unfortunately. So which were again VC funded. A lot of these wineries are also in coming up now, micro wineries, and a lot of these.
But you were very happy to accept. But Chetan, you were very happy to accept the single malt, and this is
as an individual, I drink. But we are 1,000 angel investors. So as a community, no. So that's all, gentlemen. Happy to take any questions. So unlike Professor, I didn't have any presentation. I just wanted to kind of give my 5 cents in terms of whatever little experience I have in startup ecosystem. Of course, I've been in this ecosystem for about 7 years now. So for 2014, I had spent in corporate world. I'm also working with another spatial analytics startup and part of this angel network. So I have my colleagues Hiten also and Mohit joining this call. I also want to thank them for joining this call. And that's all, Manish. Over to Ravish now.
Yeah, great insight, sir, and some good exit examples as well. Okay, so moving on, Mr. Ravish, I invite you to please take over.
Sure. So just give me a second. I do have something to share. So, I just kept a presentation as a reference. So, can you guys see my screen?
Sorry, Ravish, which batch of IIT Delhi are you from?
I am 2015 pass out, sir. I'm much younger to you.
Oh, okay. So I could not rag you. I may have ragged your father.
He was not from IIT, but anyway. So yeah, you guys can see my screen. Is that
yes?
okay?
Yes, we can.
Visible, yeah.
So yeah, so I'll I did have a presentation because I think what I decided to talk about was a little technical. So for more for my own reference, I had kept it. So I think if you guys look at it, what Chetan has given us a snapshot into is what is the potential, what upside can be there for, of course, both the startups and the investors. And what Professor Dhruv has described is that if you are looking to do a startup, what are the things that you should focus on and what are the things that investors will be looking at for him to be interested in investing in your startup. But the point at which the investor becomes interested in investing in your startup, that is, I would say, only half the story done. And the second part starts there. So I'll just showcase a flow. So basically, if you guys can see, you first pitch to the investors. Let's say you're pitching to Chetan, right? And I'm pitching to Chetan, and then Chetan eventually gives a verbal commitment. He says that, okay, Ravish, I think you are good. I'll invest 1 crore in your company. But what happens after that? Because that is like an in-principle verbal commitment. And what I would, from my experience, suggest to all the founders is that not all the in-principle verbal commitments will end up materializing. Because, if someone commits to you right now, there's a fair chance that after 2-3 months, he might not have the liquidity to invest. So let's say as a founder, you are looking to raise about 1.5 crores or let's say 2 crores. Always try to have verbal commitments for a little bit of buffer. So, ideally you should have verbal commitments for about 2.5 crores. Then I think if you're raising from different smaller ranges, then I think even if some people drop off, you should be good. Now, what happens next is that there has to be a little bit of formalization of this discussion. Like Chetan has said that, okay, I'll invest, but what next? So what comes into play is something which is called a term sheet. And basically as an investor, Chetan will offer me a term sheet, which will have, a number of things which I'll talk about later. And as a founder, I'll have to sign it. Now, one thing you all should know that while the term sheet looks very fancy and legal, it is not a legally binding document. So even if I sign the term sheet, but I don't act upon it, there's nothing that Chetan can do to me and vice versa. So actually what happens is that there are drop-offs after term sheet also. So a lot of times, some founders, what they do is they will take a term sheet from the investor and use that term sheet to go to other investors and try to get a better valuation, which is, I would say, not a great practice, but unfortunately that happens. So hence what the investor does is that they give you a certain time limit that within the next 5 the term sheet, and we have to move to the next step. The term sheet is there. And on the investor side, once he has given you the term sheet, he will also do a little bit of due diligence on your company. So basically, let's say you have said that I have this XYZ company in the US as a customer, a third party to actually validate all of that. And if in the due diligence process, he finds out that some of the claims that you have made are wrong, they are untrue, he might say that, okay, I think, what we are saying is wrong, and I think I will walk out from this investment. So even after term sheet, what I'm saying is that the deal might not happen, but term sheet is the beginning of the formalization of the agreement. And after term sheet, you enter into the signing the SH legal document, and then you take money in the bank and all of that. So I'll not go so far into the journey. Could be a 2-3 page documents. There are a lot of points in the term sheet. Now, it's impossible to cover all of them in a 15-minute discussion. So I figured out around 5 points which are pretty important, which as a founder you should definitely know. The other things I think you can figure out with time. So the first and foremost thing is valuation, right? And that is so again, going back to me and Chetan as the startup investor pair, let's say Chetan says that, okay, I've decided to invest 1 crore, but then what will he get in return, right? I mean, will he own the company? How much will he own the company? 100%, 20%, 5%. So that is where the valuation comes into play. So basically what happens is that if Chetan is giving my company 1 crore, I will be giving a certain share of the company to Chetan. Now, as a founder, if I give a share of my company to Chetan, I have to give it from my share only, right? Currently, I am the founder. I own 100% of the company. So naturally, I would want to give as less as possible, right? And as an investor, Chetan would try to take as much as possible. So it is a negotiation, right? And that is how the valuation is decided. So let's say Chetan says that I will take 10% of your company for 1 crore, which means that with 1 crore, you can get 10% of my company. So my entire 100% of my company is valued at 10 crores. So that is how the valuation is decided. So now there is a lot of, people will say that there is a formula for determining the valuation and all of that. But if you are a much bigger company, let's say you are a company at the scale of an Ola or an Oyo, when you're a much more predictable company, you have this much revenue happening every month, then typically, you can value the company by some multiples, like, 3x of the revenue that you make every year. But a very early stage startup, you most likely will not have a customer. Even if you have, he might not be a paying customer. So there is no scientific way to value the company. So I would say my recommendation is that the better way is to first decide how much you want to raise, right? How much money you want, and then typically you should dilute in the range of 10 to 25%. That's all. Right, and then it is a negotiation. One thing I think on the valuation, you should not over dilute and you should not under dilute. So don't value your company too low and don't value it too high. Ideally, for a round, you should end up diluting anywhere between 10 to 25% of your company to raise the round. The second part that I would quickly touch on is that there are different ways in which a round can happen. One could be that it is a direct equity round, wherein you give, let's say Chetan gives me 1 crore and I give him a certain amount of equity in the company at the valuation that we agree on. The second mode is a convertible round, wherein Chetan says that it's very difficult to agree on a valuation right now. I feel that valuation should be 5 crores and Ravish feels it should be 25 crores. So it's okay, you take this 1 crore from me, don't give me any equity right now. But when you raise the next round, a professional investor will come in, he will value your company through some modeling and all. Whatever value is there, we will give Chetan maybe a 30 or 40% discount. So let's say at the next round, I'm raising at 10 crores. So for Chetan, it becomes maybe 6 crores. So there's a certain discount and his 1 crore will convert at 6 crores. So it is a convertible round and it makes things much easier because you don't have to get into a valuation discussion immediately, right? So traditionally in India, mostly it has been a direct equity round, but slowly people are getting more and more open to convertible rounds. which is actually very common in the US. Right. So that is one thing you might have a question answer with the investor on. The two other things quickly. One is the board composition. Right. So typically, as a founder, you are clearly a part of the board. So let's say you are two founders who are part of the board. Now, in some cases, the investor might ask for a board seat, right? And typically, if someone has a board seat, he kind of gets a vote or a kind of an indirect say in a lot of very important or critical matters. So let's say, you want to bring in a new co-founder, or let's say as a founder, you want to sell your equity to somebody, or, if you have raised 1 crore and you want to hire a resource for 30 lakhs, which is a huge amount, you might need a board approval. So typically as a founder, I would say that at a very early stage rounds, you guys should be in the majority in the board. So it is okay to give one board seat to an investor. In some cases, you might not have to give a board seat, but it's okay to give a board observer seat, right? Wherein the investor might not have too many rights, but he has more visibility into the company. But however, to give 3-4 board seats at a very early stage round is a complete no-go, right? And I think the last point that I will touch on is another thing called the liquidation preference and the ESOP pool. So basically, the liquidation preference is something that you should understand, because I feel it's very important. Is that just take an example that again, Chetan has invested 1 crore in my company, and the valuation is 10 crores. So he gets 10% in the company. Now tomorrow, I kind of worked hard. I built an interesting product. However, I could not commercialize it so well. So ultimately, I have reached a point wherein the company can't go on forever. I mean, I'll need to shut the company. However, Professor Dhruv comes and he says that, hey, Ravish, I think what you've built is something pretty interesting. So I will be happy to, yeah. So he says that I'll be happy to pay 1.5 crores and get 100% of your company, right? So basically, he's paying 1.5 crores for a full acquisition of the company. Now, Chetan had 10% of the company. So what Chetan gets is 10% of 1.5 crores, which is 15 lakhs, right? And I get 1.35 crores, whereas Chetan had invested 1 crore in the company. So clearly, it is very, very unfair to Chetan, right? That he was not even able to get his principal back, whereas I made 1.35 crores, which is a huge amount. So to protect that, protect the investor there is something called a liquidation preference, and typically it is 1x. So what that means is that whenever an exit happens, whatever amount Chetan has invested as an investor, the first at least that much capital he should get back first, right? And only then the remaining can be distributed between Chetan and the rest of us. So like if it is 1x, then Chetan has invested 1 crore, then 1 into 1 crore, which is 1 crore, right? Chetan has first right to that. However, in some cases, the investors say that it should be 4x. Chetan will say that I have invested 1 crore, but the first 4 crores that come to the company as an exit, I will be entitled to that. Only after that, the founder can make any return. So in my viewpoint, a 1x liquidation preference is good. Anything more up till 1.5 is okay. It is not great, but it's still okay if you are not able to get other investors. But to have a 3x, 4x, 5x liquidation preference is, I would say, a complete no-go. Don't do it, because you will not get any upside as a founder. So I think I have taken decent amount of time. So just last point I wanted to quickly touch on. Another very important point is something called the ESOP pool, right? And ESOP pool is, so basically as a founder, as you grow your company, you have the incentive to work very, very hard for the company, because that if this company becomes a 5,000 crore company, you have equity in the company and you will have a lot of capital. However, for an employee that you have, there is no upside to him. For him, it is a regular job. He does it, he gets a salary out of it. So he will never have that motivation to ensure, at least in his capacity, that the company does very, very well. So to address that, what founders do typically is they give something called stock options to their employees, which is very much like owning a little bit of equity in the company, right? And let's say there's a employee that, let's say you have raised just about 1 crore, and there's a very good technical guy, and his typical market salary is 30 lakhs. Of course, you can't give 30 lakhs out of 1 crore just for a technical guy, right? So you will tell him that, hey boss, you just take 10 lakhs. However, I will give you 3% equity in my company, right? So that if we do well, you also get a very good upside. So that is what is constituted as something called the employee stock option pool, which is the ESOP pool. So and you create a pool of typically 10 to 15% from which you will take out some amount and keep giving to good employees. So as a founder, you should ensure that you have at least 10% ESOP pool, ideally 10 to 15%. Of course, having a 30% ESOP pool is not good, but having a 1 to 2% ESOP pool is also not good. So I think I'll end there, and I'm sorry for the technical hiccups there, but I hope that you guys got a gist of it. And anything else, happy to address in a Q&A session.
That was great, sir. I think we had a good mix of theoretical models, practical examples, and technical knowledge. So now I would like to request the audience, if you have any questions, so please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Hello.
Yeah, Amit, we can hear you.
Hi, Manish. Thanks for arranging this, and thanks, Professor. Thanks, Chetanji and Raveshji, for giving a very good insights about it. I would like to have one question to each of you. I will start with Professor. Professor, as you mentioned about the persistent, and I like that definition about how you utilize that and describe that persistent. Now, on the niche part, which you have mentioned on, do you really feel that any startup or any early startup precisely who has to have a micro niche as well, or niche is the something which we should go in and then slowly and gradually get into the micro niche when you scale it up further as a startup?
Sorry, your question is not very clear. What is micro niche? What is niche?
Okay, so niche is something which is, we say that still it is at the level where we know there is a problem and which we are solving in a much better way. But micro niche is something which gives you a 100% uniqueness in the market when it comes to that particular problem, and nobody probably at this point in time is doing nothing about this particular problem. So that is what I call it as a micro niche in a definition.
So let me first So let me just clarify. When I say niche, I am referring to a niche market, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll take a couple of examples. Make My Trip is in the business of hotel booking, airline booking, etc., right? We had a startup which I personally invested in called Quaco, which only put up hotels which were typically small boutique, unique kind of hotel properties, okay, resorts, right? Now that's a much smaller market than the entire travel market that Make My Trip is addressing. I just want to clarify two things. So that was a niche, right? It was a smaller chunk of the large market. I just want to clarify one thing, because I think that's important. Each person, each founder has to decide for himself what he or she is trying to create. There are some founders who are very clear. They want to create ultimately a huge startup where they may get multiple rounds of investment. They'll have huge valuations, ultimately become a unicorn, etc., right? That is one category. If you want to be that kind, then you cannot be in a niche. Then you have to have a very large market size, because otherwise you can't grow within a niche market, right? But if you are happy running a profitable venture, profitable startup in an area which cannot grow too much, but you're still making money, then you go in for a niche, right? So for example, just to give you a quick example, there are many ladies who open boutique shops, right? Now that's not that boutique is not something which will grow from 1 crore to 10 crore to 100 crore to 5,000 crores. No, it will not, right? But in that 10, 15 crore that she has, she's making good, consistent profit. So you have to decide which kind of startup you want to create. Both are fine. Both are fine. One is the guy which the kind that Chetan spoke about, which will give you a 100x or 200x return at the time of exit. That cannot be in a niche market. That has to be in a very large market. Yeah. So you have to basically decide which category of a startup you want to create. And I don't know if I've answered your question, but I've answered what I thought your question was.
Yes, for sure. I mean, to the level, yes. When I completely agree with your thought of a larger option or the larger ideas to the smaller ideas in terms of niche and the generic ideas. However, I feel that, I mean, this is what my personal view with my experience, that whenever you start niche, you become a early starter of your ideas, and each and every niche area has a option to scale it up to the larger one. Say for example, when Amazon starts, probably they started very small. When the Apple starts, it was very niche for them, right? But then they have scaled it up across the time, that they reach out to the level where they become a multi-million and a 100,000x returns and all of those.
Yes,
So yeah, few
you're
ideas
right.
are there, but then few ideas what you have mentioned as a saloon and those
No,
kind of stuff.
absolutely
Yes.
valid. Yeah, so absolutely valid, Amit. In fact, I'll give you one more example. One startup which I'm currently mentoring is called Villotail. What these guys are doing is they have identified a niche area where they will create homestays in villages, right? So they will have homestays in villages, and they are like Make My Trip, because they will get you to stay there. And it's not just a stay, it is also an experience of village life. So you may actually do harvesting, you may do,
Yeah.
Feeding of chickens, plucking eggs, etc., 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 etc. Right?
Correct.
As of today, it's a small market, so it's a
Yeah.
niche market. However, you're absolutely right. Potentially, if it catches on, it can be a huge market, very, very huge market. So you're right. Initially, when you start something, it may appear to be a niche, but the founder has to see the potential for this market to grow to a very, very large size, and that happens very often.
Absolutely. Thanks, Professor. Chetanji, question for you. I mean, very small one, but then as an investor, what is that is at the early stage when they invest? What is that is the duration or of the investment? What they look at, and what is that is a exit plan they usually have in their mind for those early stage investments?
Got it. Good question, Amit ji. See, technically, for an angel investor, right, the horizon one should be looking at, especially if you consider the current, COVID pandemic situation. So earlier, pre-COVID, the answer would have been anywhere between 9 months to 2 years, kind of a thing. But in the current scenario, it could be anywhere between, say, 1.5 to 3 years, kind of a thing. See, typically, exits, angels, exit when a Series A happens. So we typically invest, between pre-seed to a pre-Series A kind of a thing. So that's our sweet spot. So typically, when the startup is at an idea stage, or if they are bootstrapped, or if they have done some bit of, friends and family kind of a round. So post which we kind of pitch in, and that's the kind of horizon, which we look at for an exit. They should kind of get into a Series A. Otherwise, see, there is no gray area in angel investing. Either it's black or white. So if they are not able to raise a Series A, then it's the end of the story.
True, but then do you see that the both ways? I mean, in the COVID term and apart from the normal, I mean, apart from the COVID term, do you see that at that time investor look at the break-even point from a business perspective, or irrespective, you feel that that's something which is the timeline still the same, irrespective of the break-even happens?
No, see, break-even or performance doesn't really matter. See, at the end of the day, it's the valuation, right? The company may be still burning cash, but they are able to raise Series A, irrespective of whether the company is broken even, or still burning cash, or they may not be making even revenues, but the idea is so good that some large VC decides to invest. So it doesn't really matter. See, we don't really look at company getting into an IPO stage and things like that. For us, what is in it? Typically, angel investment is a short term, right? It's a high risk, high return kind of a. We don't really, we are not really VCs, right? So we come much earlier with a better expectation. Of course, VCs have larger appetite for risk. So typically, our investment anyway ranges between 2 crores to 15 crore kind of a thing. Typically, pre-Series A. So that's why we don't really look at break even and things like that. So for us, what matters is the exit.
Super. Thank you, Chetanji.
Thank you, Amit.
Ravindji, the last one to you. There are two things which I would like to put it across to you is first is that as you said, the dilution should not be more than 25% and should start from 10, which I feel that yes, what you are saying is right. And in my past, I made that mistake of giving more than 45 or 50% kind of dilution to one of our investors. But what you are saying is right. However, what if the investor sees that as a opportunity and they always ask for more than 40% or 45%? Should you feel that if the startup is something which is such that they can give just because they are in need? Though you mentioned that they take a benefit of it, but then I mean, do you feel that is something which is we should take care of?
So Amit, the way I would put it is that, if nothing is, if you don't have any other option, right, then, and if you want to survive, you will take whatever you have, right? And it's okay,
Yeah.
in such a case, you take whatever you have. But in a more practical case, let's say you have just gone into the market and some investors said that, I'll invest 1 or 2 crores and take 50% equity in your company. I would say that in a regular case, it is not a great deal. So ideally, you should try to reach out to more investors. But then, of course, if nothing is working out, then of course, like you have to take whatever you have. Or otherwise, you could just say that maybe investors are not seeing enough potential in my idea right now, but I believe in it. So, I'll put in a little bit of my own personal capital, right? But another point I would make is that there are a lot of investors in India today, right? So, like if you look at, then there are networks like Venture Catalyst who have all people from all different backgrounds. So ideally, if your idea is good, I would put it this way, that if you can get funded, you will get funded in India today, at least at the early stage. So if you are not getting a decent deal from any investor out there, then probably you should also do a little bit of introspection.
Absolutely.
I hope that
Understood.
answers your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another one is that about the ESOP which you mentioned, right? So, do you feel
Yeah.
that when any founder define this particular term as ESOP and give some equity to any of their employees, is that needs to be covered up in any specific legal document or some way? Because many times I have seen that they commit over the email or something, but then when it comes to the level, they change their stand. So is there any specific legality way which we can look at it to protect the interest from both the sides?
So of course there is legality, so there are legal documents that you can sign, which your company lawyer can do it. But the onus is more on you, Amit, because as a founder, you will be more in power to issue that ESOP document to the employee. So if you have committed to an employee, you should try to respect it. Because when you are hiring an employee, a lot of times it happens, that the founders say that I'll give you 1% ESOP, and they write it over email. But after 6 months, they say that no, I won't give you and all of that. So I think that's not a great practice. So the onus is more on you. And also parallelly, I think the ESOP market in India is still very nascent. So like only recently ESOPs, are starting to give exit. Like I know in Urban Clap, there was a huge buyback that happened. I know a lot of people who had ESOPs, they got exit. So I think the ESOP market is also maturing, right? So slowly, I feel that the employees will also start demanding. Like let's say, there's an example that you commit to an employee that I'll give you a salary of 1 lakh rupees per month, and you just commit it on email. Will the employee join your company? Obviously, no, right? He will want it in a legal document. So slowly, likewise, with ESOPs also, I feel in the next 1 or 2 years, employees will start demanding the legal documents.
True, true. Thanks, Ravijay, and thanks, Manish, for this opportunity for me. Yeah.
Sir, I have one basic question. If it is time, can I ask right now?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. As if I want to pitch my idea, what are the basic things which an investor will look in for that? Because I'll just tell my background. I have been experience of last 12 years in the engineering background. I'm heading a department. So I have been working with a company right now. So I have the ideas in the railway sector because there are lots of opportunities in the railways because I have been associated with the railways from last 10 years. So what are the basic things which you look into while investing? So in that way, I want to just pitch and how I can get into with you
You
people.
should buy Professor Dhruv's book. He has
Pardon?
described. You should buy Professor Dhruv's book. He has described exactly that.
Ravish, I have also appointed you
I,
distributor. No, no.
yeah,
Manish is a
Prashant,
distributor now. So
because I have
so,
to work on it
so
because
Prashant,
ideas are lot many with me,
yeah, yeah.
but I
Prashant,
have
just
yes, sir. Yes,
sorry,
sir.
I'll clarify. So persistent is what everybody looks for. However, you must remember one thing, and especially during COVID times, money has become more scarce, right? It is available, like Ravish rightly said, it is available for the right startup. It is not it is tough to get an idea funded. What investors are looking for more and more is proof. And that's the term I used in the persistent framework, which is traction. So there are many people who come to us with very bright ideas. We say, boss, we are willing to mentor you. We are willing to help you. Paisa nahi mango abhi, because right now we don't know whether it will work or not. See, you can have the most brilliant idea. You have a huge market size, terrifically scalable business model, highly profitable. Will it actually work on the ground? So investors today are looking for proof that it is working, which is why it is tough to fund ideas. 6-7 years back, investors, like I think Chetan rightly mentioned, the founder of your venture catalyst had invested in Oyo at a time when it was probably only an idea. That doesn't happen anymore. Today, people are looking for solid growth. They are looking for the fact that you have grown significantly, you're getting revenues, you've got customers. So please remember that. It's not easy to get ideas funded today. If you have only an idea, then the best thing is probably to join an accelerator or an incubator where you'll get a little bit of funding, but they will also help you to grow. Or you get a mentor who will help you.
Thanks a
Or, and
lot,
in
sir,
fact,
for
by the
your
way, at the idea stage, it is very, 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 very important to maintain good relations with your chacha and mama, because that is probably where you'll
correct,
get your
correct,
money from right now.
definitely. So that's the point. So, sir, in that case, how can I'll get approached with you people as of now, looking in this pandemic
No, no. So
situation?
if you want to raise funds, like I told you, there are lots of angel networks available. Like Chetan
Correct.
spoke about Venture Catalyst. I think
Mhm.
Ravi spoke about Let's Venture. I am part of Lead Angels. Just go on the internet, you'll get lots of these angel networks. But please remember, pure idea stage,
Definitely.
nobody is likely to look at you right now.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we are past our timeline now. So as we approach the end of our session, I would request Mr. Gyanesh Kumar, founder and CEO of Link CXO, to please conclude the event.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manish. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Dhruv. It was wonderful,
Ganesh,
discussion.
your face has changed. You were looking different 1 hour ago.
This is COVID phase actually. So I've got
No,
beard.
no, no.
It,
There was somebody else 1 hour ago
uh,
who was
it
posing as
was
you.
it was me only, but that was pre-COVID image. That's what it was different. Yeah.
Acha,
So
acha, acha.
it
Oh,
was.
okay, okay, okay. Acha, acha. Okay.
So Mr. Chetan was saying that many of the people you would see now with beard. So I am one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beardo,
Thank you so
beardo.
much. Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Dhruv, Mr. Chetan. Ravish, you added a lot of technical aspect to it. I'm really thankful, you could cover that. Many of the founders, co-founders, entrepreneurs are looking out for many of the ideas what you guys have given. I can connect, I'm a founder. I understand that what kind of, challenges as a co-founder and founder you face during early stage of your startup, including, setting up your team and then growing your customer base, launching the product, technical issues, and of course, funding is most important when you are ready to scale your product or launch it, right? So thank you so much. I would like to take 1 minute to introduce Link CXO. We are CXO's exclusive CXO's platform, purely on invite base. Our idea is to connect senior leaders, entrepreneurs, investors on one platform. and give them opportunity to collaborate together where they can find synergies and generate any kind of engagement what they can look out. And along with that, we are conducting these offline events where we look out for the all senior leaders' point of view and advisors and any kind of support what our early stage CXOs would look out. So events are most important thing where you can have a discussion. It's a kind of online forum when you talk live and you can share your ideas and you can share your views. So on weekly basis, we try to have one event where we invite a different set of CXOs and entrepreneurs and try to solve their problems. However, most of the things what we discuss here, these all are automated through our platform, which are AI enabled. If you are a startup CEO or co-founder or founder, you can still look out for different CXOs. It can be mentors, advisors, or investors. Their AI-based recommendation engines are there, when you could talk about that, who is the right person to connect when you're looking out for funding or you're looking out for mentorship or any kind of business lead, so on and so forth. So plenty of aspects to that. I would not take much time. I'll just play a video. It's 1 minute short video. Possibly you get a glimpse of the entire product, and you can connect to me offline if you have any further queries. Just give me a sec.
Are you hassled with too many irrelevant connection requests and news? Let Link CXO connect you with the right opportunities and right people. With Link CXO, you can be part of an exclusive CXO community, organize and attend business events, and explore unique business opportunities. Our AI-powered chatbot delivers focused industry latest news and reports. An exclusive platform for C-suite jobs and AI-enabled recommended matches. A value-based network to collaborate and share ideas and monetize opportunities. Collaborate through business events and meetups. Celebrate achievements and friendships. Enjoy exclusive offers and benefits from our premium business partners. We are building an exclusive community of senior leaders who can grow, lead, and influence the professional and social world around them. Come, be a part of us.
Yeah, so that's it. I hope you got a glimpse of this platform, and we would be happy to talk more about it. You can connect to me offline. So we launched our application 1 month back, and we are close to 200 CXOs on board at this moment, and we are growing rapidly. Our followers on different social media pages are growing rapidly. Close to 1,000 CXOs what we are looking at by end of this year. So I would be happy to invite our speakers and all CXOs to join our platform. It's invite based. Our team would send you the invitation. You can go to the Play Store, you can download the app, you can show your interest to sign up as well. If you're not having invitation code, you can ask for the invitation, and our team would check the profile credibility. If it is matching the criteria, of course, you would be onboarded. But I would be happy to invite our speakers to join our platform, have a look at it, and I would be happy to connect you guys offline as well to understand and get your feedback about our product. Thank you so much, guys. Manish, back to you. Like to add up to conclude it?
Yeah, okay. So as Ganesh sir mentioned, I have also pasted the link over the chat for the app. You can download it from there and request an invite code from within the app only. And so we come to the end of our event. I would like to show my gratitude to our speakers for taking the time out for our event, and thank the participants as well for joining us. Thank you so much all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, gentlemen. It was a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you.